OSHA compliance for finishing contractors. Again, thanks for your time this afternoon. We have a lot to cover in this hour. So just a little bit more background on me. I have assisted with the OSHA inspection management for probably over 20 to 25 OSHA inspections with multiple different clients here at Optimum. I have also gone through OSHA inspections when I worked for a large construction management company downtown Chicago. So I do want to go a little bit over that process. But today we're going to mainly focus on the OSHA top 10. So top 10 for finishing contractors, top 10 most cited standards. Where you're focusing your safety program now, if it's not in these top 10 areas, maybe it's time to realign and look at these areas and address them. If you are looking at these areas, great. We can always tighten up here. So we're going to learn a lot here today. Before we get started, if we do have any questions as we're going along, you can send a message directly to me. At the end of the training, I will try to address your question. If we do not have time for me to address your question, or if this webinar has not addressed your question by the time you have it, you can always refer to the safety helpline. So this is a great resource for everybody within FCA. You can email the safety helpline at safetyhelpline@finishingcontractors.org, or you can call and leave a message, okay? So we're committed to looking at your question and getting you some kind of response within 24 hours, Monday through Friday. So it's a great resource. As things come up, as you have questions, if you're unsure of something, please use the safety helpline. Any questions that might stem from this webinar, great resource as well. So that'll be down at the bottom of your screen, the entire presentation. So we're trying to get that out to all members so they understand that that's a resource for them. Okay, so let's talk about OSHA now and their inspection priorities. So why would OSHA come and do an inspection in the first place? So they have specific priorities for when they're coming to do inspections. Number one would be imminent danger situations. So this would be a situation if an OSHA compliance officer is driving to or from work, if they are driving to a job site to go perform an inspection, and they pass a job site, or they pass some construction work going on in the middle of the road, that's really easy to see, and they see an imminent danger. They drive past a construction building and they see employees on the roof without fall protection. They're going to stop and open an inspection. That is their first priority, imminent danger. Even if they were going to investigate a fatality, they're going to stop, put that on hold, and they're going to come talk to you about that imminent danger because they don't want another fatality happen. So that's number one. Number two is they're going to be inspecting severe injuries. So federal OSHA requires employers to report all work-related fatalities within 8 hours. So you must do that. So they're going to be notified within 8 hours, and that will stem an inspection, or any work-related inpatient hospitalizations. So if someone is injured and they are admitted into the hospital for treatment and care, this is not the same as going into the ER, receiving stitches and leaving. So you actually have to be admitted into the hospital for treatment or care. Amputations or loss of an eye. All of those must be reported to federal OSHA within 24 hours. So that is also going to stem an inspection, which could result into some citations. Next, worker complaints. So OSHA is very good about getting out the awareness to employees that they can go on the website, they can fill out a complaint form. They are anonymous. They have to put their name, but OSHA keeps them anonymous. And even if they weren't anonymous, if you found out who complained, and it stemmed from doing an inspection and you receive citations, you cannot retaliate. OSHA protects all these employees under the Whistleblower Act. And if you did retaliate on that employee, it would just create drastically more issues for you. Referrals from other agencies, absolutely. So if EPA is involved, or even the media, if you're on the news, that's going to stem an inspection. Targeted inspections. So these are specific high hazard industries. These are programmatic inspections. So if 1 through 4 isn't taking up all their time, they're going to go to these targeted inspections. And just pull up OSHA's website real quick for you, which is a great resource. If you don't utilize it, please start looking at it. I know there's a misconception out there that OSHA monitors who looks at their website and they're going to come inspect you because of that. That's not true. It's an awesome resource. But over here in enforcement, they have national emphasis programs and local emphasis programs. So these programs are what we're talking about when there's a planned inspection and they're coming for a local emphasis or national emphasis. So you can click on these and get more information, broken down by region. I'm located in Chicago, which is region 5 is Illinois. And you can see we have a local emphasis program for high-rise building construction in Chicago. So this is in Chicago, if you're on a project, once that project hits 10 stories or higher, OSHA is going to come out unannounced and they're going to complete an inspection of the job site. So that's a local emphasis program. And then our last inspection priority is a follow-up inspection. So that's how OSHA would come out and actually inspect. And what is the process? So it's good to understand the process as well, so that in the event that you do have an OSHA inspection, you know your rights, you understand the process. So again, I've been involved in this process many times from top to bottom. Sometimes I get involved in the middle, sometimes at the very end. With our clients, it's best that they get us involved from day one immediately. OSHA steps foot on site. They're telling the OSHA inspector, please hold on, I need to call my office. That should be a mandatory procedure for every company, right? Last thing you want is a inspection notice and citation in the mail, and you didn't even know they were on your job site. So you need to communicate that to your employees. And at any point, if an OSHA compliance officer steps foot on the job site there to call the office, we tell our clients, contact us right away. We'll get the inspector on the phone. We'll ask them to wait a reasonable amount of time, which is about 45 minutes. They will wait to get management representative out on site. Sometimes that's tough to do if the general contractor is controlling the inspection and they don't inform you about it. Hopefully they do. Or if they're taking it on and starting, the compliance officer is going to start with them. But there must be an opening conference, okay? There has to be an opening conference. This is where the compliance officer is going to show you their credentials. There has been stories of fake OSHA compliance officers out there and then just saying, hey, pay me under the table, this will go away. So, but they do have to show you their credentials, and they have to tell you why they're there. What's the reason for the inspection? Is it imminent danger, right? Is it a follow-up for an injury? Is it a programmed local emphasis? Was it a worker complaint? So why are they there? And they need to stick to that scope, right? If it's a worker complaint and they're complaining about ladder usage on the job, they need to stick to looking only at ladder usage. So they almost have blinders on where they're only looking at ladders. However, if they do see something out in the open, plain view, and it's imminent danger, they're going to expand the inspection. So opening conference, okay? Then they're going to start their walkthrough inspection. Very important that when they take pictures, you take pictures. When they're writing stuff down, you're writing stuff down. Take good notes. A lot of times we get involved after the walkthrough. OSHA has all their pictures. They're never going to show it to us. We're working with our client. They didn't take any pictures. So that's a tough spot to be in. I don't know exactly what transpired. We go in for the informal conference, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, and OSHA's throwing pictures in front of me that, whoa, that's a total different situation that was explained to me. So it's hard to defend if you don't have the pictures. Okay. Employee interviews. When OSHA wants to interview employees that are part of management, including your foreman and superintendents, the employer can participate in those interviews. With the employee, those are going to be one-on-one. You cannot participate. They're going to be one-on-one with the employee. The employee has rights. They have the right to talk to OSHA or not to. They have a right to that private conversation. Document request. So OSHA will request some documents like your OSHA logs, programs pertaining to that particular issue. There's fall protection issues. They're going to ask for the fall protection program. A lot of other things. So a lot of times they'll try to do this verbally. Hey, just send this to me. Just send this to me informally. You want to ask for a formal document request. Just politely ask, can you formally send me your document request? You want to know then what you submitted to them. You want to keep record of all of that. At the end of the day, if you believe you received a citation that you can fight, you want to make sure that you know exactly what you provided to OSHA. So just handing them stuff and letting them walk away with things, or your foreman doing that, is a bad situation that you can get in. Closing conference. So once they've completed their inspection, which, you know, it could take up to 6 months. Sometimes they're looking for more documents. They're looking into it. They're trying to see what standards they want to cite you for. So it could take up to 6 months to have this closing conference. They're going to have it with you. A lot of times it's over the phone. And this is when the compliance officer is going to let you know what standards they're recommending that you get cited for to their area director. And when they say that they're recommending these, usually the area director's already signed these, and they're just waiting to be put in the mail. So it's pretty good idea of what's coming. And then you will receive your citation and notification of penalty, at which time you have 15 business days to set up an informal conference, which I highly recommend. This is where you can go in, and if you know you were in the wrong, you admit it, humbly admit it. Hey, we know we were wrong here. This is what we're doing to change it. This is what we've done currently to make sure it's right. This is what we're doing moving forward. Show good intent and ask for a reduction in the penalty, and they'll give it to you, right? If you don't go to in that informal conference and you wait 15 days to pass, citations are the citations. You owe that amount of money. They stick. At the informal conference also, if you don't agree with something, you can put up your case and negotiate with the area director on whether it should be serious, maybe drop down to other than serious, maybe remove a citation, and come to an informal settlement agreement. At that point in time during the informal conference, if you still do not are not in agreement and you want to take it to the next level, you can take it through the court system. Obviously, you're going to have to hire an attorney by that time. It's going to cost you some money, a good amount of money. But if it's that serious, if they're willful citations for $120,000 each, and you really don't think that you deserve them and you don't think it's willful, yeah, it's time to hire an attorney. Hopefully you knew that it was going to get that bad and you already had an attorney on board, and fight it through the legal system, which can be done. A lot of people think, I get these citations, I got to lay down and pay them. That's not the case. You know, you have rights. If you think that they're unjust, then go talk to the area director, talk about it. If you think that it needs to go through the court system, then go ahead and move forward through that. So frequently cited OSHA standards. On OSHA's website, anybody can look this up under this data and statistics area, okay? Using the North American Industry Classification System, you can punch in there any classification number, and you're going to get the top cited OSHA standards. So that's what I've done for this presentation today. So the information that I've pulled is federal OSHA. So federal OSHA, there's about half the states included, 26 out of the 50, a little over half. The other 24 states are state-run programs, okay? So we're looking at about half of the country. So when we're looking at these, to get a good estimate, we could double everything, okay? Before we get into the top 10 for the finishing contractors, though, I do want to remind everyone, starting August 1st of this year's, penalties have increased 78%. So the dollar amounts we're looking at today, this information is actually historic from September of 14 to October of 15, right? So if we're looking at the future, we could take all these historic numbers and dollar amounts, and we can multiply them by 78% because they're going up. Okay, so in the past, a serious or other than serious could have been $7,000 max penalty. Now it can be about 12.5 max. Willful or repeat could have been up to 70,000. Now it's going up to about 125,000. Okay, so this is adjusted for inflation since 1990. They have not risen since then, and now every year they will rise with the consumer price index, so about 3% every year. So that's important to keep in mind here. Now, if you do get a serious citation, does that mean you're going to get the full 12,471? No, they take into account how severe is the situation. They take into account the size of your company. If you only have 20 employees, they don't want to cripple you to put you out of business, right? They just want it to hurt enough that you change. If you have 400, 500, 600 employees, yeah, you're looking at the higher end of that spectrum. So 12.5 is just the maximum, not saying that every citation is going to be 12.5. And when we look at these, we'll see kind of on average historically what these citations have costed. So we look at construction only, and
Got it.
Sorry about that. My PowerPoint is all right. So we look at construction only, and in a year's time, there are about 33,000 citations, right? That total about $67 million. So again, that's half of the country. So if we double that and we increase it by 78%, we're talking about $240 million worth of penalties annually that OSHA brings in. All right, per citation, that's about $3,600. So this is pretty significant. Of all of that, specialty contractors are the bulk of it, over 75%. So finishing contractors, you're falling under specialty contractors. So that should get your attention, right? Construction of buildings, that's your general contractors. Heavy and civil, that's your road contractors. And now we're going on here. Sorry about that. So this chart's not pulling up, but what it's showing is, you know, the bulk of the specialty contractors is actually foundation, structure, and enclosure. So that would make sense. That's what this 44 million is. So that's the bulk of the specialty contractors. All right. Finishing contractors sits in the red pie slice. So it's probably, I don't know, what does that represent? 10 to 15% of specialty contractors, which makes sense, right? That imminent danger, that's number one. Foundation, structure, enclosure, they're all exposed to outside. They can drive by and see what's going on. Finishing contractors, typically we're inside. They have to get in the building to catch us doing something wrong, okay? And then out of that, with our finishing contractors, you know, the bulk of it, or a third of it is drywall and insulation contractors. A third is painting and wall covering, about 20% finished carpentry, and the balance is everybody else. So you can kind of see where the citations are coming from here. All right, so moving along here. So the top 10 most frequently cited standards is what you're looking at right now. So what I did is I took the top 10 by quantity of citations. And again, this is time frame between October of 14 to September of 15. So it's a historical year. And then I organized them 1 through 10 by the average cost of the citation. So you can see that fall protection, the duty to have fall protection, is number 1 on our list. Not the most citations, but dollar amount wise, it's up there. All right, almost $1 million for finishing contractors just in fall protection. Okay, so that's pretty significant. Number 2, scaffolding general requirements. 3, scaffolding aerial lifts. 4, ladders. 5, fall protection again. This is system criteria and practices. So we're going to talk about all of these today. 6, I lump these 2 together because they have to do with training on scaffolding and training on fall protection. So you can see 1 through 6 all have to do with working at height. Working at height, right? So working at height, number 1 fatality in construction is falls from heights greater than 6 feet. Okay, so 1 through 6 on our top 10, that reflects the same thing. Where are the citations coming from? Working at heights. So any work at heights, you definitely need to be zeroing in on, taking a look at. Number 7, electrical. 8 is lead. So if you pulled up the code just for painters, number 1 cited standard is 1926-62 lead. So that's number 1 for painters. All right, it drops down to number 8 on all of finishing contractors. Number 9, PPE, respiratory protection, and then 10, hazard communication. So that's a big one. There's been some changes and starting to see a lot more hazard communication citations to start driving the enforcement of those changes. So we're going to dive into all of these, some more extensively than others, but I want to give everyone a good preview and maybe some things to be thinking about while you're out there. So fall protection. 501 is the duty to have fall protection. So this is OSHA telling us when we need to protect our employees from falls in what certain situations. 501 doesn't tell us exactly how those, they tell us how to protect them, but they don't tell us the details of how, right? So this is you shall, and then 502, we'll look at that. System design that's the how to comply, okay? So we're gonna look at a number of these items. What we're not gonna cover here is leading edges, formwork, and reinforcing steel. That's reinforcing steel for a concrete deck. That doesn't have anything to do with us. Excavations, we're not going to talk about that. Pretty much says you need to have fall protection in place if an excavation, you can't see it due to plant growth, okay? Dangerous equipment, overhead bricklaying, roofing, precast concrete, residential construction, and we're not going to cover that today. We're going to hit what you see on the screen: general, unprotected sides and edges, hoist holes, ramps, wall openings, and protection from falling objects. So that's really where we need to focus on as finishing contractors. So general, 5A1, I'm sorry, 501A1, I see this cited a lot, and this is just kind of throw it at you, and it's kind of a catch-all. This is a bad one to be cited for because it's easily repeatable. So if we're getting cited for a 1926.501A1, we want to go into that informal conference and try to narrow down the situation, right? We want to say, hey, this had to do with a hoist area not having fall protection, so let's have B3 cited. A1, you can repeat that. repeats, again, could be up to $125,000. So you don't want a citation that would be easily repeatable because it's so big in scope. So what is 501A1 saying? Pretty much all it's saying is that the employer is required to provide fall protection systems, right, set forth as stated in 502. Okay, great. A2 is talking about structural integrity of the floor, right? So we need to just know that if we're sending someone into a remodel, let's say, that floor is structurally sound. So walking working surfaces structurally sound. Okay. So unprotected sides and edges. So anytime we have an unprotected side or edge and we have a fall hazard greater than 6 feet, right, 6 feet or more, we must protect our employees with a guardrail system, safety net system, or personal fall arrest system. That is it. So if you guys are using anything else, chances are you're out of compliance, right? If you're using things you maybe heard of, safety monitors, maybe you've heard of warning lines, controlled access zones, right? That has nothing to do with finishing contractors and everything to do with precast, bricklayers, leading edge, roofers. Okay, so if you're trying to rely on something like that, the safety monitor, warning line, controlled access zone, fall protection plan, controlled access zone, let's relook at our operations. Let's do a job hazard analysis. Let's put into place guardrail systems, safety nets, or personal fall arrest systems, because per OSHA, that's all you can use. Okay, hoist areas. So I see this a lot. We're going to hoist material in through a window possibly, or we're going to take a guardrail down to lift up material to another floor, right? We need our fall protection. We need a guardrail system or personal fall arrest system. It has to be in place before we take that window out, before we take that guardrail down. That personal fall arrest system has to be in place. And also, what are we doing to protect other employees in the area? So a lot of times I'll see the individual up at that point receiving the materials tied off, but then he might walk away with a cart of something and come back, tie off, and receive the next, and then walk away. And then he disappears to the bathroom and goes to lunch. And this area is just open for everybody to access. So when we're talking about OSHA, they can cite us for being either the contractor that created the exposure. So your employee was working in this hoist area, took the guardrail down and disappeared. He created the exposure. You can be cited. You can be an exposed contractor. Another company on site took the guardrail down and your employees were working in the area. That you're getting the citation. They're exposed to the hazard, right? And then we have our controlling contractor. That's the general contractor. If they knew about this or there was a pattern of people taking down guardrails, leaving them, exposing other contractors, right? They're going to get roped into it as well. So this is exactly what we're talking about here when we're loading in to these areas. So if there's a fall hazard, again, 6 feet or more, that's the magic number for federal. I know Cal OSHA is 7.5. I'm not sure about other state plans, but federal OSHA is 6 feet when we're talking about unprotected floor edges on walking working surfaces. We'll get into scaffolding. Fall protection requirements are a little different there, where they let you go up to 10 feet. Steel erection, we don't need to talk about because finishing contractors, we're not doing steel erection. They have some special rules there. General industry, well, we're construction, so we're going to stick with their 6 foot. General industry is 4 foot. So 6 feet is the magic number. That's the one we want to be thinking of at all times. So do we have the personal fall arrest system in place before we take the guardrail down? Do we have some kind of barricades up behind where other employees can't access that area? Holes. Absolutely. Holes need to be covered. So OSHA defines a hole as a gap or void 2 inches or more in its least dimension. So you can have an 1.5 inch slit going 10 foot down a floor, and that's not considered a hole. All right. Probably still a good idea to get it covered. We could kick stuff down there. You know, maybe OSHA could cite us for other reasons if the floor was dirty and people were walking down there and stuff was falling, right? But technically it's not a hole. So 2 inches or more in its least direction. So any core holes, obviously, any square openings, they need to be covered, right? When we have a fall hazard of, again, 6 feet or more. They call out skylights in the standards, skylights. So these are huge. So if you're up on a roof area and there are skylights, we have multiple fall hazards to consider, including fall off the roof, right? So we'll get into talking about parapet walls here in a little bit. But what about these skylights? Are they protected? Right? There's multiple products out there where we could cover skylights. Here's one example on the screen. There's netting systems, there's guardrail systems. At the end of the day, if you have to wear a personal fall arrest system, so that, you know, in the chances your employee fell into a skylight, they're not going to go all the way down, might be what you need to do. Extremely dangerous in areas where it snows. We get up on that roof and we can't even see the skylight because it has snow on top of it. Extremely dangerous. Ramps, runways, other walkways, absolutely. If we have a walkway or a ramp that's 6 feet above the lower level, we absolutely need guardrails on there. So guardrails only, okay? Wall openings. So they call out trash chutes, which is a great example, trash chute, but any wall opening, all right? If the opening is 39 inches off the ground, you're good. Any lower than that, we have issues. When we talk about guardrail requirements, this all makes sense. So that opening cannot be lower than 39 inches. Once it is, we need a guardrail system in place. So we need to put something up at 39 inches minimum, or we need, again, safety net system or personal fall arrest system. So here's an example here. On the left, that trash chute obviously has some major issues because we have fall hazards all around. On the right, if there was some type of wall up and that was 39 inches, we'd be compliant. Protection from falling objects, absolutely. So anytime we're going to have a floor where objects could fall, or a mezzanine level where objects could fall, or some scaffolding where objects could fall, we need to protect our employees. OSHA says we need to protect them with a hard hat plus one of the following measures. So we're getting into where OSHA's calling out now some PPE, right? Personal fall arrest, by the way, is PPE. So we've already been talking about PPE. When we're thinking of hazards, we want to think of the hierarchy of controls. And it doesn't start with PPE. So a lot of times we're thinking, oh, there's a hazard, throw some PPE on them. That's our last line of defense. Always our last line of defense. So we want to be thinking, how do we eliminate this hazard altogether? If I can't eliminate it, how do I protect the employee with some kind of administrative control, some kind of plan, procedure, some kind of engineer it out with the guardrail system, right? Engineer the hazard out. Last, PPE. So we need hard hats, and then we need erect toe boards, screens, guardrail systems. Maybe we need a canopy, right? An overhead canopy. So different areas, barricading off areas. So when we're talking about loading, we saw the picture of the gentleman loading drywall into a building. What's going on below there? We got to restrict access from employees walking under there. How are we doing that? Hopefully, at bare minimum, we're putting up some danger tape. That's an extremely dangerous situation. That falls could potentially kill someone. So warning tape would not be acceptable. Minimum would be danger tape. A lot of general contractors are moving towards a robust physical barrier. So some kind of guardrail system, some kind of a barricade system that, you know, someone can't just duck under the danger tape, or we can't walk through it, or it rips, or it's blowing around in the wind. They want something sound and structural there. So we're going to jump down to number 5, since we're talking about fall protection, and we just talked about guardrails, personal fall arrest systems. But OSHA has more to say. They have specific system criteria and practices for all of this. So we not only have to have the fall protection in place at the right time, we have to be using it the right way as well. So we're going to talk about all of these. We are not going to talk about positioning devices, warning line systems, controlled access zones, safety monitor systems, or fall protection plan. If you believe you need to use one of those for something and have further questions, great opportunity to reach out to the safety helpline. Okay. So general 502A, they're saying that we have to comply with everything in this section. And then they're saying that the fall protection has to be in place before the employee begins the work, before the hazard occurs, before they're exposed to the hazard. Pretty common sense, right? We got to have the fall protection in place beforehand. So makes sense to me. Guardrail systems. Okay, top rails, 42 inches plus or minus 3 inches. So they're giving us a little bit of leeway there. They do that for multiple reasons. One example, if we're talking about that trash chute, was at 39 inches, or if it was at 40 inches, you know, we have some play there. Parapet walls have a little play there. Anything below 39 inches, we're going to have an issue with. We talked about that. Also, a lot of times on when we pour the concrete on a metal or wood deck, we're going to lose the 4 to 8 inches. So it allows us to erect a guardrail at 45 inches, and then when we pour that deck, maybe it's at 39. So we get a little play there. That top rail must be capable of withstanding 200 pounds of force in an outward and downward direction. So think about it. When someone's going to fall, they're going to fall down and out. So that guardrail system has to be able to support that. And when it's supporting that 200 pounds, it cannot deflect more than below 39 inches, which is our 42 inches minus 3. So that's an important number, 39 inches. Cannot deflect lower than 39 inches. So wood guardrail, if it's deflecting that much at 42 inches, I'm pretty sure it's broken by then. So that's going to be an issue, but that really comes into play if we're using steel cable for guardrail systems. So a lot of times we'll see those, and those aren't tight. Maybe someone did remove it to load some material up, and they put it back and they didn't tighten it up because they didn't have the right tools, right? And now that thing deflects lower than 39 inches. That's going to be an issue. Whoever created that situation could get cited. Whoever's working in that area and is exposed to it could get cited. If it's been like that for multiple days and the general contractor knew about it, they can get cited. So multi-employer work site, everyone's getting cited at that time. Mid-rails, they don't call out a number, but it has to be halfway, okay? Halfway. So if you have a guardrail at 40 inches, you're going to want that at 20. Pretty straightforward. 4221 is the common there. Down below, you see some examples, right? Straight guardrail system in the middle, and then on our right, a window opening. So if that window opening, that bottom sill was at 21 inches, we would just need to throw one guardrail up at 42 inches. If that bottom sill now was, lower than 19 inches, was at 15 inches, we're going to need the top and mid rail. All right, so something to be looking for. Don't get caught up in that trap where you think it's right and you're working by it. Go ahead and measure it. Make sure it's right. A lot of times you're not putting that up. You're just trusting that it's right. We can use intermediate members in lieu of a mid rail if they're posts not more than 19 inches apart. So a lot of times we see this on our stud walls, 18 inches on center. You can just throw a top rail there and don't necessarily need the mid rail if they're not more than 19 inches apart. Wire rope, so we already talked about this, the 39-inch sag, and yes, they must be flagged every 6 feet for visibility. So a lot of times we also see the wire rope is up for guardrail, and it's not flagged, and you just can't see it. So every 6 feet, that's as easy as tying caution tape on it every 6 feet. Sometimes the caution tape will slide all the way to one end, so maybe not a good situation if you're outside. Using high visibility netting or any kind of visible netting at that matter works just fine. On the right, we have an example of a parapet wall, obviously lower than 39 inches, so we need a guardrail system, and it looks like it's maybe only 12 inches, so they have a mid rail on there as well. On the bottom left, we have some window openings. Again, if those are 39 inches, we're good. We don't need anything else. If they weren't, they would need to put some more protection up. Safety nets. So don't see this that often. Sometimes we'll see safety nets in a hole opening. A lot of times as secondary protection. So I've seen it where it's actually underneath a hole cover in the event that that hole cover gets removed and someone falls. They have the safety net there as a secondary means. You'll see them sometimes on some buildings outside the building. A lot of times it's for material, but can be used for personnel as well. In some situations, it might be useful. Definitely as a secondary means. I've also seen people use personal fall arrest systems, and they have safety netting below them. In the event that failed or someone forgot to hook up, the safety netting would catch them. Personally, I don't think it's a great choice for a primary means of fall protection. There are some very specific requirements here. We're not going to get into all of them, but the sizing of the mesh opening, the border rope strength, the type of connections. So you really need to look into that and dig into that if you're using these. Depending on how far below the fall is, they need to be out a certain distance. So if they're up to 5 feet below us, they need to stick out 8 feet. 10 is 10, and then they can only be a max of 30 feet below us, and they need to stick out 13 feet. It's just kind of crazy thinking that someone would fall 30 feet into a net. But something to look at. Probably not going to be using that. See these a lot actually on high-rise construction where they have lookouts to load material at the front of it. They got to open the doors to bring the material in, and they'll have a safety net out there. Sometimes guys still tied off, but again, secondary means. And you have to do drop testing on these. So a lot of requirements, not a great choice. Personal fall arrest system, is PPE, should be our last line of defense, but it is used a lot of times, very common, very frequently. A lot of times it's misused or not used properly. So there's a lot that goes into personal fall arrest systems. If we're not training our employees on them, I can guarantee you they're not doing it right. If we are training our employees on them, I can guarantee you if you're not checking up on them, they're not doing it right. Right? So we need to be looking at this stuff. Very specific design requirements. So we're not going to go and make some homemade system, okay, and go put it to use. A lot of this stuff, store-bought. Buy it from your PPE supplier, get the systems, get the complete system. If you feel that you need to engineer something and design your own thing, great. Make sure you get it stamped by a professional engineer, all right? We have to select the right system. So when we're talking about personal fall arrest systems, we should always be thinking ABC, anchor point, body harness, and connector. Okay, properly maintained and inspected before every use, very important. Properly set up, absolutely, and must have a rescue plan in place. Okay, so if someone were to fall and they're dangling there, how are we getting them out? How are we getting them up? We should be really thinking about that. After 5 minutes, some bad consequences are setting in place. Think about where those harness straps are. That's a main artery. Your legs carry a lot of blood. If that blood can't get back to the heart, you're doing a lot of damage, right? And some clotting will start. And by the time they are taken down, if there's clotting in the legs, and that goes up to the heart or brain, can be some serious consequences. So we must have a rescue plan in place. Is it a boom lift? Is it a ladder? Is it some type of retrieval device? How are we getting them down? A lot of good examples here. Top left, you have a horizontal lifeline system. Next to that, you have a vertical lifeline system with a rope grab on it. So again, you have the body harness, the anchor point, and then what's in the middle is connecting them. On both of these, it's a 6-foot lanyard with a shock pack. On the right here, you see a retractable lanyard. So depending on the clearance distance below us, yeah, we say you need fall protection if you're exposed to a fall 6 feet or greater. That doesn't mean that that's going to stop you from hitting the ground, right? If that fall is right there at 6'1", and you have a shock pack 6-foot lanyard on, and it's hooked up right at your back level, and you fall, by the time that elongates, you're hitting the floor. Probably not a good option. You need to get that elevated above your head, or a retractable, which is going to stop you a lot sooner. A lot of systems out there, drop-in anchors, where you drill a hole and you can into a concrete wall and put a drop-in anchor out there. Here's an example of one of the toolbox talks that all FCA members can have access to. We'll talk about that at the end here. But this is telling us on the left all the requirements. You know, the force on the body, it has to restrict to less than 1,800 pounds. Our anchor point has to be a 5,000-pound anchor point. So a lot of good stuff there. Covers, they have to support at least twice the intended load. So if we're talking about out where vehicles are going to go over them, that's big heavy-duty plates. On a job site, is a scissor lift going to roll over it? If so, it needs to be able to support that lift, the tools, the guys on it, everything secured down, right? We can't just throw it there. It has to be marked or painted so it's high visibility, all right? Painted with the word hole or cover. Protection from falling objects, that's when we get into our toe boards, 3.5 inches from the working level. Can't have more than 1/4 of an inch clearance between it. Obviously, we don't want anything to roll under the toe board. That's the reason it's there anyways. Get that all the way down to the walking working level is best. Not more than 1 inch between toe boards as we're going along. All right, 50 pounds. Scaffold requirements. So a lot of requirements for scaffolding into the platform construction, how it's supported, what's underneath it. We have our supported scaffolding, we have our suspended scaffolding. 2 different animals. How we're accessing the scaffolding. Hopefully we're not climbing it, right? We'll definitely get a citation there. How we're using it. Fall protection on scaffolding bumps us up to 10 feet, right? 10 feet. A lot of job sites are going to say, I don't care, we have a 6-foot fall rule. Make sure the guardrails are on at 6 feet, all right? But the standard does say 10 feet. Falling object protection, a lot into this as well. You can see why if we go back here, standard citations is the most citations. Not the highest dollar value, but the most. There's a lot here that we can get cited for. A lot of scaffold use going on out there. Again, toolbox talk here, great resource, weekly topic. We have tons of them. This one's on scaffolding. Capacity of the scaffolding, 4 times its intended load. All right. Are we using mud plates, sill plates underneath the scaffolding? It's absolutely required to have a sill plate, a base plate, right? If we don't have that base plate and that tube is just sitting right on the concrete, it could start digging in. If we're outside, we need the mud sills, right? We don't want to start sinking into the ground. Guardrails, they give us a little bit more variance here between 38 and 45 inches. Okay, they're doing that because of the cross section. We can use that either as a top rail. So if it falls in between that 38 and 48 inch mark, we can use it as a top rail. If it's lower than that, we can use it as a mid rail, but we can't use it as both, all right? So it's one or the other, and then you have to put another railing up. Our platforms, no gaps, right? It has to be fully decked, no gaps. We're using scaffold planks, right? I love the engineered stuff that just clips on the platform. You can't have a gap in it. It clips on, it's fully decked. You don't have to worry about it. But if we are using scaffold boards, they have to be proper boards. The overlap is very important. If they're not overlapping the support enough, they could slip off. If they're overlapping too much, someone could possibly go out on that area and it's going to flip up. So some things to be looking for. Competent person, absolutely. Must be on site, must inspect this thing daily. Daily inspections. Other things you're seeing here, how are we accessing? Stair towers, great way. Ladders, let's use the correct angle. End frames, only if they're designed to climb. So they'll actually have a ladder built into it. Not sure if I have an example here. The middle picture on the right-hand side, that scaffold frame cannot be used for access. You're going to have to mount a ladder to that. All right. We go back here. This end frame, it actually has a ladder built into it. You can utilize it. As we're stacking these, we want the ladder to stay on the same side, obviously. We don't want to flip-flop them. I've seen it before, right? That defeats the purpose. Cannot climb the cross braces. Cannot get over the guardrails shouldn't be standing on buckets anyways, but we're not going to put a ladder on the scaffolding to gain height. If that's the case, maybe we need another tier scaffolding. 4-to-1 ratio, minimum dimension to height, 4-to-1. When you're outside of that ratio, that thing's going to tip, so it needs to be supported. Outriggers are tied into the structure. Rolling scaffolding, I know we're using a lot of this. All of these come with manufacturer's instructions and safety procedures. It's good to look at. It's good to train your employees on that, especially if all you're doing is using these rolling scaffolding. Pull out the manual, do a training on it. It's going to tell you the proper way to set it up. It's going to tell you that when you go at 2 tiers, you need to have the outriggers on, right? These things are can easily tip over. We don't want to be skating with them where the wheels aren't locked and we're shimmying our way around. They need to be in good condition, fully guardrailed. A lot going on there. Going to keep moving on here because time is getting away from us. Going to roll into aerial lifts. So the scaffold standard that we just looked at, 1926 451, that includes scissor lifts. Okay, that includes scissor lifts. 1926 453 is separate, that's aerial lifts. So I know that there's a bunch of confusion out there, and so I want to try and clear it up. So a scissor lift, your traditional scissor lift, whether it's for inside or outside use, all of the guardrails should be in place and in good condition. The gate should be closed. The chain should be up. Whatever the case may be, if it has a gate or a chain, all of that's in place. If not, you can receive a citation just for a chain being down. Since all of that's in place and we're working on the platform, we're not climbing on the guardrails. If you climb on the guardrails, you can receive a citation. We're working on the platform. OSHA does not require you to have personal fall arrest on. Now, that being said, there are a lot of general contractors out there that are requiring that we have personal fall protection inside a scissor lift. Okay, we're talking about scissor lifts still, not aerial lifts. So if they are requiring you to wear personal fall protection inside a scissor lift, please tie off to the designated tie-off point on the scissor lift. If it does not have one, you cannot tie off to it. Too many times I've seen people tie off to the top guardrail on the scissor lift. The top guardrail. That's putting someone in an extreme situation that if they were tied off and they decided to climb on top of the rail, which we should not be doing, right? But we know it happens. When that happens, if they were to fall, not only are they going to fall like they would if they weren't tied off, but they're also going to pull the thing over on them. So they're going to suffer the fall injury and then the crush injury. I'm not saying that if you're going to climb the guardrails, you shouldn't be tied off, right? We shouldn't be climbing the guardrails, but we also should not be tied off to the top of the rail. So designated tie-off point, it's rated for you to tie off to. It's down near the floor, so we can't get up and over the guardrails in the first place. That's the only reason these manufacturers put them on there, is so you stay in the basket. Now, aerial lifts, 100% must be tied off, personal fall protection 100% of the time. I don't care if you're taking the thing off the truck for when it's being delivered, or if you're driving it down the street or driving it into a job site and the basket's only a foot off the ground. Has to be 100% tie off. We could hit a hole, we could run off a curb, that thing could catapult us and throw us out. Tie off is required 100% of the time in aerial lifts. So a lot of standards here. OSHA references the ANSI standard all the way back from 1969. That has been updated, and the manufacturers, I guarantee, are following the updated ANSI standard on how they're designing these lifts. But OSHA adopts ANSI standards when they write the standard, and they don't. It takes act of Congress literally to get a change. So 1969 is what they're calling out. Specific requirements. Only authorized people can operate aerial lifts. Yeah, you need specific aerial work platform training. Belting off to an adjacent pole or structure. Big no-no. Cannot be doing that. And be tied off 100% of the time. So we need to be, not only do we need to have a full-blown aerial work platform training in the classroom and then a road test, anytime one's delivered to us or we rent one, we need a familiarization training. That's as easy as asking the guy dropping it off to you, hey, I haven't used this control system, can you go over with me real quick? Or, I've gone through this, let me see if I understand it, yeah, I'm good. Right? It takes 5, 10, 15 minutes on site. Manuals have to be in the lifts. Know the capacity, stick to the capacity. Power lines, 10 feet minimum clearance, and then it's going to have the placard right on there, how far to stay away. We got to be honoring those. Let's not work off the mid-rail. if you need a little bit more height, it's a push of a lever, and that thing will go a little higher for you. 100% fall protection. All right. So training requirements. So we're talking about scaffolding and fall protection. We have to train our employees. So for scaffolding, any employee who performs work on a scaffold. So that's your classic scaffold user training. Must be trained by a qualified person. Okay. So if they're going to use a swing stage, they have to be trained as a swing stage user. If they're going to use a supported scaffolding, they have to be trained for supported scaffolding. Any employee who's involved in erecting, dismantling, moving, operating, repairing, maintaining, or inspecting a scaffolding must be trained by a competent person. So our erector, dismantler training, that's over and beyond a user training. So if you're putting up scaffolding, you have to be trained specifically to those hazards associated with it. If you're installing a swing stage, you better know how to do that, because you're having a lot of people trust you, right? And then anytime employer believes that an employee lacks the understanding or skill, maybe we change out this kind of scaffolding we're using, we need to retrain. Maybe we witness the employee not doing the right thing, we need to retrain. So not only could we get a citation for not doing it the right way, if we don't train our employees the right way, we'll get a citation. If we don't have a program also, we'll get a citation. So one situation could result into 3 citations. Fall protection, each employee who might be exposed to fall hazards. So if you have a hunch that they could be exposed to fall hazards, you have to train them. Need to be trained by a competent person, okay? So that could be as simple as we just need to train them on what a guardrail should look like. And if the guardrail is not in place, they can't work in that area. And if it is in place, they need to make sure that it's OSHA compliant, right? It might be that simple. If it's personal fall arrest, we have a lot of training to do. We need to certify that training and keep it on file. Ladders, more working at height. We need to not only inspect our ladder. Let's start by picking the right ladder for the job, right? Same way we pick the right tool for the job. Let's pick the right ladder for a job. If we need an extension ladder to get up to another level, let's not take an A-frame ladder, fold it in half, and lean it up against the wall, right? That's a violation. So if we need an extension ladder and we have to get up 20 feet, well, let's not grab a 20-foot ladder. We're going to need one significantly taller than that. We have to take into consideration that it has to be 3 feet above the landing, and we have to get it back at a vertical to horizontal ratio of 4 to 1, right? So let's pick the right ladder. Once we pick the right ladder, let's inspect it, right? If it's damaged, a lot of times I hear, well, we sent the damaged ladder back, and on the next job we got the same ladder, right? Well, our processes, our internal processes are broken. Are we tagging it? One contractor, they started just taping it, right? They tape it with red tape it together so you can't open it. So when it gets back to the shop, the guy in the shop, it's a very clear visual cue that something's wrong with it, and he can throw it away. All right. Instead of thinking that it can go out to the next job. And then let's set them up the right way, and let's use them the right way. Step ladders, we cannot stand on the top 2 rungs. Need to keep our belt buckle within the center, all that good stuff. Electrical. Sorry, I am going to go a little long here. I'll probably be another 10 to 15 minutes. If you have to sign off, I understand, but we'll keep going along here. So electrical, this is a big one. 404, a lot of this is electricians and how they're installing temporary electric. But the one that I would really think that finishing contractors are getting cited for here under 404 is ground fault protection. So ground fault protection. So the standard actually states that you must either use ground fault circuit interrupters as specified in B1II, which you see right below there, nice, short, and easy, or you use an assured equipment grounding conductor program as specified in B1III. My personal opinion is don't use the assured equipment grounding conductor program because it is a pain to comply to, right? Ground fault circuit interrupter, literally, you plug your outlet into a ground fault circuit interrupter outlet, or you carry these extenders with you and you require your employees to use those at all times. Assured equipment grounding, we're not going to go through it. I'll show you the standard. Looks like this. That is a lot to comply to. If you're not doing it right, you're getting a citation, right? You got to inspect every cord. You got to tape them. You got to do this. You got to do that every 3 months, this every 6 months. Don't do it. Use the GFCI protection. Use the GFCI protection. It's easy, right? It's easy. It's going to protect your employees from electrical shock. Okay, how do they work? How do they work? They're not a circuit breaker. Circuit breaker is going to protect the equipment. It's going to protect an overdraw so we don't heat up the wires in the wall and have a fire in the wall, or we don't burn up the electrical panel, right? Circuit breakers are 15, 20 amp breakers, right? 15, 20 amp. GFCI, it does its job at 1 milliamp. That's when it's tripping, 1 milliamp. So 20 amps versus 1 milliamp is life or death, right? 1 milliamp. So what it's doing is it's throwing so many amps out there. I got this power drill and it's pulling 5 amps, right? If it doesn't get all 5 amps back within 1 milliamp, I'm sorry, it's 5 milliamps. Within 5 milliamps, still very, very small, 0.005 amps, 5 milliamps, within a fifth of a second, that thing's gonna click off, right? So if it's not getting all of that back, it's losing it somewhere. And it's most likely losing it because we're using a bad cord and we're standing in water and we're grounded somewhere, so it's going through the employee, right? Voltage doesn't kill, amps kill. So once that goes through the employee, if it goes through the wrong path, the wrong amount of time, and the high enough current, it's going to kill them. It goes through their heart for so long, it's going to kill them. So this is going to stop it on a dime, right? If we're just relying on the circuit breaker, we're waiting for it to overdraw at 15, 20 amps. That's not going to happen. Our tools don't operate that high. Okay. What's it take to kill us? 0.05 amps. 0.05 amps could kill you. Put your heart into an irregular rhythm, the same rhythm that an AED is sensing for, that if you're in that rhythm, it'll shock you to actually stop your heart so it restarts again, right? So you're in a heart attack mode. Don't want to be in that situation. So doesn't even take that much to put us into a heart attack situation. You know, this is not an ad for Bosch, but I just threw this in here. This is advertised to run off of 7.5 amps, which is pretty high. But even if it was 2, it only takes a little bit of that to kill us. So as a little extra bonus, so that was 404, right? So we're going back to 405 here. You're going to see some stuff for 405. That's number 11, so top 11. And there's a lot in here that we can learn from and we can use and we can take a look at on our job sites. All right, so lamps have to be protected from accidental breakage. You're probably thinking, but we're not electricians, not our responsibility. If you're exposed to it, you can be cited. Temporary lights can't be suspended from their electrical cords. I'll show you an example of that. If you're exposed to it, you can be excited. I'll give you an example of that. Flexible cords, if they're going through sharp corners or doorways, they need to be protected, right? That happens all the time. Your extension cords, are they in good condition? Do we have the right type of extension cords? Hard or extra hard? All right. So here are some examples. These cages on our lamps, they're all broken. You have employees exposed to that, where the actual lamp is broken and that's energized. Your employees are exposed to energized parts. You can get cited. Your employee could get injured, could be electrocuted. See this all the time, where the photo's in red. That's wrong. The lamp is just hanging there by electrical wires with wire nuts, right? Great example is this same situation in a corridor. Put the drywall up, cut around it. The drywall was up. The taper goes in there. He's taping around there. OSHA comes on site and says your employees are exposed to electrical hazard taping around that those live wires there with wire nuts on them. They received a citation. Electrician received a citation. General contractor received a citation. So if that's going on, talk to the general. Let them know that that needs to be fixed, right? It needs to be supported differently. It needs to be enclosed. Are cords on the ground? If so, they're going to present a tripping hazard, and when they get damaged, they will electrocute someone. I thought this was a creative idea for sharp edges on this gang box. They installed an outlet inside the gang box. That's good. But yeah, are they run through doorways? Are they going to get damaged? If so, we need to take a look at that. And then homemade splitters. Come on, this is crazy, right? Let's use the GFCI stuff. Nice three-way splitter. By the way, with the GFCI, if we're using a three-way splitter, I see a lot of times that we'll roll an extension cord all the way out and then use that splitter. That whole extension cord is not protected. So if it's damaged in water, someone walks through there, could have an issue. So we want to have the GFCI protection at the source, all the way at the electrical outlet. We've seen this on jobs. We can't be exposed to it, right? So we could get cited. Open electrical boxes, no good. All right. Sorry for the graphic picture. Moving along here. Lead, this is huge, right? This is a huge standard. It has a lot going on in there. If you're working with lead, I really hope you already have a program. You figured this out. If not, let's talk. Let's make sure that you get this figured out. You will get cited. Your employees will get exposed. Not only will they get exposed, they can bring this home to their family. They can expose their family. Some nasty stuff. You don't want to mess around with it. Again, number one for painting contractors, number one cited for amount of citation is lead. So there's a ton of requirements here. All right. And when I say a ton of requirements, I'll give you an idea how big the standard is. So I just hyperlinked the standard. Again, you can read it on the OSHA website. There's a lot going on here. I'm going to just keep scrolling, and you can see it goes on forever. So we need to make sure we're doing it right. In summary, it's given us definitions. One major definition that you need to know of is an action level. This is when you need to take action. When all of this starts applying is when you hit over 30 micrograms per cubic meter of air of lead concentration over an 8-hour time-weighted average. So if all of that sounds really foreign to you and you're using lead, let's talk. We need to get some air monitoring going. Once you trip that 30 micrograms, all of this takes play, right? Permissible exposure limit. And this is kind of a good introduction to silica standard, because the new silicon standards similarly written, where they do have action levels and exposure levels, all right? So permissible exposure limit, 50 micrograms per cubic air. That means that your employees cannot be exposed without personal protective equipment, so respirators, to 50 micrograms over an 8-hour period. If they are, you're out of compliance. You're endangering your employees. So how do we know? We have to do air monitoring. And then we have to methods of compliance. Before we even get into respiratory protection, we have to look at engineering controls. We have to look at work practice controls, written programs, mechanical ventilation, administrative controls. All of that's very important. All right. Then if we cannot control it If we can still not get it down to that 50 micrograms per cubic meter, then we provide the employees with respiratory protection. We're going to need some protective clothing, Tyvek suits, that sort of thing. We're going to need some daily housekeeping, special housekeeping routines. We're going to need hygiene facilities, areas for your employees to change, showers, eating facilities, hand washing facilities. Yeah, a lot of times, if we're dealing with this, we're going to have a trailer dedicated on site just for all of this, maybe a couple trailers. Medical surveillance, so we're getting the employees tested before they start and then annually. Make sure their lead levels aren't rising. If they are, maybe they're not wearing the respiratory protection properly. Something's going on, something's wrong, right? We have to train them. We have to have signage up. We have to keep all the record keeping, and we have to observe the monitoring, okay? So there's a lot going on there. Respiratory protection. If we're using respirators, we have to have a program. We have to have the employee medically cleared by a medical healthcare professional. So any of your OCMED clinics, they could go there. They fill out a form. That medical history is between the employee and the doctor, right? If they have asthma, heart conditions, lung conditions, and claustrophobic, that doctor's not going to clear them to wear a respirator, right? They should not be in a respirator. The last thing we want to do is them put on a respirator and they get hurt from it, all right? So once they're medically cleared, maybe at the doctor they're doing some tests, some pulmonary function tests. They're coming back to you, okay, I was cleared by the doctor. Great. Now we need to train them. We need to train them annually. We need to make sure that they understand the different types of respirators, the different types of cartridges, how to do a positive and negative pressure test, how to store the respirator, how to clean it, right? If we're not cleaning it and we're storing it out in the open, $7,000, well, $12,500 potential dollar fine, right? Just for not keeping it in a plastic bag and storing it properly, we could potentially get a $12,500 fine. That's kind of crazy. So let's make sure we're doing it right. After we train them, we're going to fit test them, make sure that their respirator fits them. Okay. If you're not exposed to any contaminants where respiratory protection is required, you don't need a full-blown respiratory program. However, you would need a respiratory program that only is going to address dust masks used on a voluntary basis. Okay. So on a voluntary basis. Dust masks are considered respirators. They're a filtering face piece respirator. N95 has to be printed on it. NIOSH N95. NIOSH, the word NIOSH has to be printed on it. Your employees still have to be trained, right, to Appendix D annually. So this toolbox talk, if they sign this every year, they're trained and they can voluntarily use a dust mask when it's not needed for nuisance dust. Okay, our last one here is hazard communication, and then we'll be wrapping up. So hazard communication. So couple changes here from 94 standard to the standard was revised in 2012, and it's had a phase-in period which just ended June 1st of 16. So we should be up to snuff now. If not, you're in the area where you could be cited, okay? So you're looking at some old labels, what they used to look like, safety data sheets versus material safety data sheets. So we'll dig into this a little bit. So our MSDS, no longer, they renamed it to safety data sheet. They didn't just rename it. These all have to now be, chemicals has to be classified differently from the manufacturer. So that's their job. And then they have to present it in this same 16 section format. So in the past, you know, if I wanted to look up first aid measures, it was kind of all over the place. Now it is specifically in section 4 all the time, so it's a little easier to read. Our responsibility is to make sure that we do a chemical inventory. We know what chemicals we're using. We have the safety data sheets up to date for all the chemicals, and they're available for all employees. So having a book that goes in the gang box, in the truck with the employees, we can't keep these locked under locked door. They need to be there where the employee can access it. And labels, this is a little bit more challenging. In the past, we could smack a label on it with this health, flammability, reactivity, and write numbers on there with the name of it, and it was a done deal, right? Nobody knew what any of that meant. Nobody knew the difference between a 2 and a 4 for health. The new labels, they're going to have these pictograms, which is going to be a little bit, you know, if I see a skull and crossbones, I'm paying some special attention, right? Before, if health was 3, maybe I wasn't too concerned. If it was 2, maybe I wasn't concerned at all. But maybe now it has a skull and crossbones on it. So it's going to tell us the name. It's going to say either danger or warning. It's going to give us the pictograms. And then it's going to give us a hazard statement. So may cause cancer, will cause cancer, may cause respiratory issues, will cause respiratory issues. It's going to tell us exactly the hazards. And then it's going to give us some precautionary statements, how to go about using this in a safe manner, how to store it. First aid measures might be on there, and then the supplier identification. So how do we get these labels updated? Section 2 of the safety data sheet is label elements. You could take that information, put it on a label. You could call the manufacturer, ask them if they have any secondary labeling. I'm saying secondary labeling because all of our containers need to be labeled. If you're taking something from a 55-gallon drum and putting it in a gallon can or a 5-gallon can, it needs to have a label on it, right? If we leave that laying around on the job site, somebody doesn't know what it is, we have an issue. Using water bottles, that sort of thing, you're going to get a citation. So there's common stories out there. Someone puts some kind of cleaner in a water bottle, takes the label off. Someone goes and drinks it on a hot day. Now they're in the ER. So we don't want any of that. No beverage containers can be used for chemical storage. I don't even care if you have the right label on it. Can't use an old Gatorade bottle with the right label on it. Let's get the right containers. Okay, so just in summary, recap 1 through 10. You see that there on the screen. Again, these are showing the current penalty numbers. So initially, you know, when we're looking at fall protection, duty to have fall protection, $3,600 citation. That's the current on average. Initially, maybe it was $5,000. Right? And then they went into the informal conference and they had a discussion about it and they got a reduction in penalty. So I would never just accept a citation. At bare minimum, go in, talk with the area director, let them know that you're going to move forward in the right direction and ask for a reduction in that penalty. Again, any questions? We're not going to have time for questions because I am already over on my time. Any questions that you may have that stem from this webinar, please send an email over to the safety helpline at finishingcontractors.org. Any questions that you may have in the future for any safety related items, please feel free to call the number or send an email. Some of the toolbox talks that you saw on the screen, if you're interested in gaining access, that's available to you for free. There's over 200 toolbox talks, English and Spanish. There's preset 52-week schedules. You know, it's about $800 a year value that you can have for free. I would recommend, if you're not doing toolbox talks already, that this is a great place to start. If you are and you want to mix it up a little bit, want to get some new content, some different content, please contact Darlene over at FCA. Monthly safety bulletin. You guys should be getting this on a monthly basis. Have a safety update, 2 articles on a focus of the month, and then 2 articles on current, 2 blogs on current safety topics. Just another thing that the Safety Advisory Committee has put together. So if you are interested in getting more involved with FCA safety, we do meet on a monthly basis. We have an hour-long conference call, traditionally the 4th Tuesday of every month at 2. We ask any members to join if you're interested. If you are, please contact Darlene, let her know. She'll add you to the invite list. You'll get the agenda. This next meeting is a week early because there were some scheduling conflicts, so it's September 20th. I would love to get more people involved in that. That would be great. And the last thing I have for you guys is, we're going to be doing these webinars on a quarterly basis. So the next 2 we have coming up is the new silica rule, and then one on effective safety management systems, because all we're really talking about right here is compliance, right? We're not talking about a way to actually manage a safety program and start getting that culture of safety, which we really need, both of those if we're going to have a successful road in the compliance arena. So be looking for those. Confined space for construction, OSHA top 10 for finishing contractors. These have been recorded, will be up on the website as well. So without further ado, sorry for going over time here a little bit. I hope that everyone got a lot out of this, and we'll see you guys at the next webinar, or hopefully at the monthly Safety Advisory Committee. Thank you very much.